Swimming like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank, coming to you virtually from Seattle and the entire PNW, which we are now annexing in the Bay Area again today, part of the PNW. Listen, if you want to learn how to start, grow, or run a successful business, you're at the right place. This is the podcast for you. This is where we say street smarts and book smarts collide. I'm Dan Whedon, and my co-host today is the incomparable Linda Popke out of the Bay Area.
Hi.
Our guest is my good friend, Nolan Reynolds from Soulfire Films. Nolan's entrepreneurial journey began at 14 years old when his dad put a camera in his hands. From that, he used that as a beginning to found his own video and film company where he has filmed countless weddings and corporate films, and maybe even some other cool things. We'll find out. I had the great opportunity to work on a project with Nolan, and I know you will find his story interesting. Nolan, welcome. We'll be with you in just a minute. Everyone, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Overcast, and YouTube. Boy, what's that make us, Linda?
It makes us ubiquitous.
We are ubiquitous. We come to you from about a dozen other cities, including the mothership in Atlanta, Boca Raton, Charleston, Boston, all over the place. But before we bring on Nolan, and I want to say hello to Linda. Linda, how are you?
I am great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Linda, one of the things that people will hear today when I talk about you as our sponsor is you do book editing.
Yes.
And I know you're a ghostwriter as well. You do a lot of cool things with the written word. In fact, you were the editor for my book, the last one I did with Captain Jack before he passed, called Back Nine Walking. I have a plead the fifth style question. You don't even know it's coming. This was not set up, everybody. We're doing this live. It's great radio. So here's my plead the fifth. What was the hardest thing that you found and the most challenging in working with me?
Oh boy. Wow.
And me sending you stuff. What did you just say? Oh, that Dan.
And don't let this go to your head, but you were not a hard client to work with. The hardest thing I found with other people is I've worked on some books where we were literally kind of building the plane while we were flying it, and it was being written as I was editing, and that's a little challenging.
Oh.
But that's okay. No, I think you knew what you wanted to do. You had a good first draft. And some clients I work with need a little more work. Some need just kind of massaging. So no, it was fun. It was a great project.
Well, it was easy because Captain Jack refused to be edited. I think we said that his deal was do not edit me. I'm uneditable. So I think you had a part of it you didn't have to worry about. Now right. Linda, you're an expert of editing in the written word. Our guest today, Nolan Reynolds, is an expert in editing in the video world. And I know that firsthand because Nolan and I worked on a project last year. It was a fantastic project where he created, I just kind of sat and made a bunch of suggestions, but he edited. We had 2 videos that we did for one of our clients who had a 65th anniversary of their business and a special birthday for the founder who was hitting 90. So he did 2 videos, and I sat and did a lot of work with Nolan on the editing part. A lot of stuff hit the proverbial cutting room floor, but that happened. So first of all, Nolan, welcome to the show. We're glad you're joining us. I guess my start of my questioning is editing the most challenging part of just your work? I'm thinking that it's kind of fun to record and a video and all of that. Is editing the most painstaking?
Well, thank you for having me, and don't sell yourself short on all the work you did on that project, because you contributed quite a bit before I let that one slide off. Yes, I would say in general, editing can be the most difficult. every project's different, and so there's definitely some shooting scenarios that may have their challenges. But yeah, in general, editing is difficult. It's more so the creative process of it and making everything really flow and gel. And I'm really like picky and OCD about it. So, I'll put something together and then tear it apart, put something together and then tear it apart, and then a new song or new this or new that. So yes, editing can be a challenge for sure.
It's funny, Nolan, my daughter's also a video editor in Hollywood, and you look at some of the movies that are coming out and you say, God, they could have edited that down a lot. So how do you work with the client to make sure that they have a vision for what they want, but you know that it needs some editing? What are the things that would help a business person create the kind of video that doesn't require having to start from scratch 5 times? What kind of advice could you give to business people who want video?
Man, it is difficult because there's this you need to kind of let people kind of flow, and you don't exactly know when the kind of the golden nugget pieces are going to come. So you want to let people flow, so you don't want to bog them down too much. But really just a simple thing would probably be really just writing things out. A lot of times that can help, just writing out kind of a bit of a script of where we're going to go, and then just setting a timer and reading it. And then you can see, oh, okay, if I go this far, oh, that's about 4 minutes just for that one segment. So if we're trying to do a 5-minute video, we've got one segment that's 4 minutes and we've got like 8 segments to go. we're in bad shape.
I think it's interesting the time we live in that YouTube and just plain technology has made everybody a videographer, right? I mean, or at least we like to think so. It can be as simple as flipping the camera or getting a gimbal like I just bought and starting to do some things. What is, I think, still a professional quality that people sometimes try to aspire to, but may fall short, is that balance of entertainment and value, content value. And I'm just thinking, especially those who are in the business world, who are trying to become an influencer of some sort. They want people to watch and consume their content. You could throw out a whole bunch of content. If it's boring, nobody's watching. If you're entertaining, but you're saying nothing, nobody's going to watch any further. What is the kind of the secret, at least in your mind, of really balancing entertainment and content?
Man, it really has gotten interesting these days with the evolvement of video in general and YouTube and all that. And there's some YouTube channels, podcasts, all kinds of different things that really might have super simple video production quality, but have millions and millions of views because of the content. And then of course, there can be some incredible footage of just, I can think of some of the scenic channels where they travel and they do these incredible videos of like these beautiful places with super high quality cameras and gimbals and drones and everything. That could be pretty amazing. So I think it depends on the project, but for me with working on more commercial corporate type things, utilizing a gimbal, like you said, or drones, and keeping the camera moving and interesting and finding interesting dynamic ways to kind of like captivate our eyes and our brain. Those are always going to help. And then it comes down to being a really good interviewer, which you did a great job at, being comfortable with the people, having a good understanding of the full story that needs to be told, so that you can kind of help to get whoever you're interviewing to help to get them where they need to go. Which, working with you on our project was great because you really knew so much of the detail. A lot of times I'm coming in and I've gotten very little information, and I'm just digging to try to figure out what's the important thing that we need to get to here. So yeah, I would say an understanding of the story and why it's important and what needs to be shared about it. And then getting creative in your B-roll stuff, really digging in the B-roll and finding ways to just capture every little moment that you can along your shoot. And then as you start to go into the editing process, of course, is when you can start to pull everything together. But I guess if that answers your question
It
somewhat.
does.
So Nolan, so we have this kind of abundance of riches today, where we all have these incredible cameras in our hands and our phones, right? That probably better than we used to have in old SLR cameras and video cameras, if not that long ago. So people are doing all these things. They're doing TikTok, they're doing YouTube, they're doing LinkedIn videos. When that's all fine, because that's great, but when should they do that, and when should they consider bringing in someone like you who's going to take the production values up to a whole different level? What's the right time should they call you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Gosh, you know, I would venture to say that really everybody could benefit from it. Not necessarily that they need it, but that they would always benefit from it. You know, even somebody doing a simple podcast, to have somebody come in with professional sound and lighting and really good cameras and angles, and maybe even having something as simple as like a slider on one camera can just bring this whole new dimension, as opposed to just kind of, you know, on your cell phone. Not to say that obviously there's very successful podcasts and simple videos out there. I could think of maybe a cooking video, or somebody who's just entertaining that could literally just have a camera, their phone sitting there. So I would say really anybody, I think, would benefit from it, probably more than they would think, just because of the production value that will come to it. But gosh, that's a good question. Yeah,
Well, I would
guess
think, you know,
anybody.
just off my own, I would think if you're going to post, it's one thing to post a social media post where you're walking down the street, or you're at the beach, or you're doing something, and you're doing something for fun. But if you're going to put a video that highlights your company, that is going to be, for lack of a better term, your commercial, you know, that I think now all of a sudden, everything about lighting, everything about audio, everything about camera angles, everything about what's being asked, and the amount, I think, of the editing that's going to need to go into it, because you're going to take probably 3 or 4 times as much of what you need. I think whenever you're going to start doing something like that, at least that's my idea, you need to obviously bring in a professional, because it's more than literally taking a selfie type of thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's kind of, my answer is like, you could always benefit from a professional. Yeah,
Right.
whether or not financially it would make sense, you know, if it's just a hobby and you're not really making money from it, that's one thing. But you know, maybe if you could start to go down that road, and it could become more of a profession. I don't know, but yeah, I would say you could always benefit from having a professional do it for you. They could really bring a lot.
Speaking of professional, I mean, in reading the bio that you sent to us, it sounds like this, you somewhat stumbled upon this, even though your dad, you said, put a camera in your hand at 14. You went down to LA to do, you know, you were going to be an actor. I think if I read your bio, you're going to go down and become an actor. Next thing you know, I believe your mother was doing some producing at PBS and things like that, and you made a switch. Talk about that transition.
Yeah, I went down there to LA. Just, I've really been into film and acting as long as I can remember, being an early teenager, when my dad put the camera in my hand and we started making, you know, little YouTube videos. Well, not, I can't say YouTube videos back then. We were before the curve, but what would have been YouTube videos back in the day. And so I just really fell in love with it very early and wanted to do that for a long time. So yeah, we moved to LA. I joined a theater group. I traveled around. I acted in quite a few different plays. Did some independent films down there. Had like a featured extra role in Coach Carter with Samuel L. Jackson. Yeah, you can see me for like 2 seconds. I'm on the bench of Arlington is the name of the team that they play against. I'm on the bench. If you look for 2 seconds, you might catch me over there on the bench. So yeah, I was into that. I really found passion for film because of the connection that I feel like it gives us the ability to have. And it's such a funny thing in LA for people who have been there, because there's a lot of people who really are the same and have that same mindset. But then there's this whole other thing in LA that I just didn't really care for that much. So yeah, I kind of started to burn out on it. And then, yeah, I just, I was working a restaurant job, of course. And, I kind of had the idea of like, gosh, why don't I start doing, some film production and making money that way? And so I got talked into buying a camera by my wife and my mom at Best Buy, bought the camera. I did, I think I bought it in like May. I did a free wedding that month, and then by July that year I had it like I was booked for the rest of the year with weddings, and like as far
Wow.
on as I wanted to be. It was just within a few months I was pretty much full-time doing that. And then I started coming back and forth between Seattle and LA, doing half and half of the year. And just started to, we're from, my wife and we're from here, and we wanted to buy a home, and it just started to see the differences. Like, you know what, I think we just want to be there. And so we eventually just transitioned permanently to here. And then, yeah, along the way, as kind of you saw in my bio, I started to branch out into all kinds of different things and got more and more corporate type videos or all kinds of different projects to kind of spread out my year and not have to do quite so many weddings.
Well, as you probably knew just from your days of acting and all of that, we got to pay the bills somehow. We're going to do that right now. We're going to take a short break to hear from today's Spotlight sponsor. And when we come back with our guest, Nolan Reynolds, for our Hot or Not section of the show, we're going to find out what he thinks about Pleasantville. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. Does this sound like you? I'd love to write a book, but I just don't have the time. In fact, I'm not sure where to even start. Maybe you have a compelling story to share or valuable advice for clients and prospects. If only you could get that story out of your head and into a published format. Think you don't have time to write a book? Think you aren't a good enough writer to get your message across? Think this all sounds too overwhelming? Well, think again. At Leverage to Market Associates, we help aspiring authors transform that long stuck book idea into an attractive published work. If you've written most of your book, we can help edit your work and drive it through the production process. If you're not sure where to start, we'll coach you through the creative process to organize your thoughts and create a compelling book outline. And look, if you're just not comfortable writing a book yourself, we can ghostwrite for you. Contact Leverage to Market Associates for a complimentary evaluation of your nonfiction book concept today and bring your book to life.
All right. Well, welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and the brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm Linda Popke. Our guest today is Nolan Reynolds, and our next segment is Hot or Not.
Well, Nolan, this is where Linda and I are going to pepper you with questions about business, about life. Who knows, about maybe just a whole bunch of other things. You tell us whether the concept's hot or not and why or why not. At the end, you win absolutely nothing, but we hope you have some fun. I mentioned Pleasantville. Maybe you're too young to remember that movie Pleasantville, starring William Macy. But it was about getting stuck in a black and white version of a 1950s sitcom. So that's my way of asking, hot or not? Black and white video production.
In general, not. Occasionally, it can be when at the right time and the right place.
Okay. Why? I'm just curious. Why would you go to the not part? Because I know that from a photography standpoint, black and white can be very, very it'd be very. I like black and white photography. What about the video? What changes that?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you, but yeah, it's just kind of an industry thing. It's kind of maybe it's a funny industry thing, but it's just viewed as like a, kind of an easy way to, if you're kind of like you're working on a project and you're like, oh gosh, it's just not really that cool. Like, oh, let's throw it into the black and white and try to add some dimension to it. I guess it's a kind of an industry, maybe snarky thing.
Okay.
But it can be used really cool. Actually, there's a wedding that comes to mind that one of my favorites, when I started in black and white, and then you can cut from that in that same clip, kind of cut from black and white into color, and then kind of the story started. And then by the end of it, it was the same clip continued on. and start in color and then finish in black and white. So there are definitely some really cool ways to use black and white, no doubt, that really add a cool character and dimension to it. I guess just maybe the thought is just if you're just doing it to do it without intention is when maybe it can be like, you didn't need to do that.
Okay. So I've got a question for you because, again, we've got so much video going on. Hot or not, putting videos on your company website, is that something that we should do? And are there things we should be thinking about in terms of how people are viewing them, whether it's on mobile, how long it takes, how long the video should be?
Yeah, I think hot for sure. I know myself, just when I'm going to websites for companies for different things that I might be looking for, if there's a video, I always really appreciate watching it. Yeah, for length, I think that it would be wise, and even with the video that Dan and I worked on, having a shorter and a longer version of kind of the same thing that you can, and maybe, I don't know if you put the text in your website to let people know, if you just want the really quick, like, this is what I need to know video. But for people who are maybe a little more interested and like wanting to look into more, they can look for a longer video.
So a quick follow-up question, hot or not, putting captions on videos that you put in a corporate setting?
Captions, kind of like it's like right now, it's reading and doing that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's probably wise nowadays because so many of us might be on our cell phone. I do this all the time. You're in public. I might be standing in line at the grocery store. It's a long line. I've got nothing to do, and I might kind of scroll and see a video, and I don't have my headphones with me or something like that. And so I'll definitely catch myself kind of reading to see what's going on. So yeah, I think that's probably a good choice for that purpose, for videos that might be viewed in that sense.
You mentioned that, but and I guess this is probably an age thing, but I remember as my parents were getting older, and now I'm finding out I don't necessarily hear that well anymore, and
What?
yeah, what? And I just don't, for older people as well, and it doesn't have to be older when you're losing your hearing, and but having that caption available as well. I'm curious. I'm just going to follow up on that. Is that something that you do as part of it? Do you have to hire somebody have to hire somebody else for the captions? Is that all part of what a videographer like you would include as part of your work?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I've never done it.
Okay.
I've never been requested to do that in any of my projects, but I would have to imagine that there's some softwares. I'm wondering even now I use Adobe, and I wouldn't be surprised if they have a plugin or something within it that will let you just it'll automatically generate that, I would think.
Right. Okay.
That'd be a lot of work to do it the old school
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. I can imagine. Go back to hot or not. I think I know what the answer to this is going to be, but hot or not, life balance. I know that you work from home. You've been working from home before. I mean, before it became popular, before it was an in thing. We both were working from home. I know you have a family. Talk about dealing with life balance while you're home and office and all in the same place.
Yeah, it's challenging, as anybody knows. It's tough. It's tough to get into that working mindset sometimes when you kind of slumber out of bed, and maybe your desk is in the same room or it's in the next room, and it just kind of feels like you don't get that feeling of taking a shower and getting dressed and getting out and seeing people and stopping at the Starbucks and honking at the lady at the red light to kind of get you to get you going. So yeah, I would say I do quite a few walks throughout the day. We have a dog, and so I take her probably on a good 3 walks a day. Just hit the block and kind of get some oxygen. It's been interesting now too with my wife working from home with COVID happening. It's so funny. We built a new house, and we have this corner office that I'm in, fortunately, now, because she's in the office today. But we built it with kind of me in mind, because I'm always working from home. And then of course COVID happened. Now she works from home, and of course she gets the corner office. And so it's been interesting with that. But yeah, I think just getting out, having our own separate activities. We hit the gym and try to keep moving. And I guess that's my best answer, is just try to stay active. And when you're not being productive, just get out and go do something else and come back. I try not to spend those hours where you're just kind of, 50% and through it. Just kind of like, if I'm not 100%, let me just get out of here and then come back and look at it again and see if I can make some better progress.
So as a kind of a follow on, I mean, we're here, I think in this next coming week, we are at 3 years since the start of the pandemic, which is pretty amazing. Feels like yesterday and feels like 100 years, right? At the same time. How has the approach to video changed as a result of this? I mean, we're all on Zoom. People couldn't even spell Zoom before. Things that we thought need to be done in person are done on video. How has that impacted kind of the way people approach video in the sense that you do? Certainly weddings were being done live stream, et cetera. But what's changed for you and since the pandemic started?
Yeah, definitely a lot less in-person meetings. There used to be a lot more in-person meetings, whether it be the corporate videos or the weddings or any of that. It'd be pretty common to just meet at a Starbucks or wherever, talk over things. Those are pretty few and far between. I actually had one just a few weeks ago, and I want to say that was the first one since the pandemic. So yeah. Yeah, I would say that side of it changed. As far as the video production side of it changed, really hasn't changed too much.
Are people more open to using video now because we've been using so many different ways?
Yeah, I would say in general, people are just kind of more used to video content. I do feel like I've had more inquiries for more corporate type of videos in the last year or two, which may be a result of that. Yeah, Boys and Girls Club, we did a virtual, they do every year, they do an in-person dinner fundraiser. And so we had, I guess it was just 1 year, they had to do a virtual event. So we did an entire virtual, we filmed an entire virtual event. So
well, you know, the interesting thing, I mean, as you talk about this, I have to think that 3 years ago, because I guess I hadn't thought about that, Linda, it's March 8th. It's probably almost right on the nose when 3 years ago, the world, everything closed shop. But I got to think, because your world was video recording of live events. So all of a sudden people stopped having weddings. They stopped, they were just waited. They stopped having corporate event. They stopped having everything. And for you as a videographer, I got to believe that was pretty scary. Talk about what you had to do during that time period to be able to keep creating revenue.
Yeah. It was, weddings definitely slowed down. Everything. Yeah, you're right. Now that I'm thinking back into that time, I guess I'm thinking kind of in the last year or two, but yeah, thinking about that time period, weddings, everything really shut down. I did a couple very small, like, backyard, people were having like backyard weddings, outdoor, very, very small type weddings. But no, it was just a tough time. I think I was just lucky that my wife was still working, and we were fortunate to be in a good financial situation where we could kind of ride it out. But yeah, I mean, if we were dependent on my income at that time, it would have been tough, because it definitely shrunk for that the first year, I guess I would say. And then it exploded after that. I feel like probably a lot of businesses had the same experience. So yeah, for us, it was kind of the same with weddings. So many weddings got postponed and all that they all got pushed into the next year and the next year. And it just kind of went bonkers with that. And like I say, more and more corporate video interest too. So it was very slow for the first year and then bonkers for the next.
Okay. So going back to Hot or Not, because you've done weddings, you've done corporate. What's hotter? What would you prefer? Would you rather do weddings? Would you rather do corporate? Something else?
That's a good question. I'd have to say, oh man, I would say I like doing them both. It's if I had to do just one all year long, I probably would get, you get kind of burned out on doing just one. So I really appreciate the opportunity to mix it up. Weddings are like super high pressure. You only have one chance. Everything has to be just right that one time. Otherwise it's, you don't get another shot at it. but it's only going to be for, 8, 10 hours, whatever it's going to be. And you're just there. And so it's just that. Whereas a corporate video, like as with Dan, maybe we shoot something and we kind of don't like it. We can say, why don't let's grab them again and see if we can get the interview this way. So you've got that more kind of relaxed feel, which I like them both. I guess I couldn't really say either or. I appreciate mixing it up.
So you can't get them to walk down the aisle 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I just had that visual, Linda. I just had the visual. Hey, could you redo that? And would you walk a little bit like this? Or hey, could you redo those vowels? I didn't like how that sounded. You can't do that, can you?
No, which it's exhilarating at the same time because it is like that. So you really kind of, you get into that, that flow space or whatever you want to call it. You get into that. Whereas, maybe with the corporate video, that's a little slower. You don't quite get so much into that exhilaration feel, but it's planned out. You got time to prep for it and get things how you want them to be. And so they both have their pros and cons, but yeah, if I had to do just one all year long, either one can kind of, get redundant. And I think as a creative person, I like to, keep things moving and keep it different.
Well, talking about keeping things moving, we got to keep this show moving, and we're live. So we got that exhilaration as well. We're going to take a short break to hear from our corporate sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Nolan Reynolds, for our Plead the Fifth section of the show, we're going to find out a little bit about what makes him such a great interviewer. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. And Plead the Fifth is brought to you by our corporate sponsors, Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial, First Underwriters Insurance, BC Fitness Studio, and Upstart Group. Please visit www.shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle to learn more about these terrific companies. Now back to the show.
Okay, well, welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm co-host Linda Popke. Our guest today is Nolan Reynolds, and our next segment is Plead the Fifth.
Well, Nolan, we're gonna turn up the heat a little bit. We're gonna do a little thing we call Plead the Fifth. If you get to one that you feel just uncomfortable answering, you might plead the fifth. If you do, that's the only one you get. So
okay.
be wary of that. But I don't know, you're kind of a game guy. I'm gonna guess you're not gonna fair catch too often. So I'm guessing that you have had projects where you're interviewing somebody and they're about as exciting as a bologna sandwich. I gotta think that you've had those opportunities, and here you're supposed to create some wonderful work of art from it. What do you do in that case? How do you find how do you find that nugget? How do you turn the bologna sandwich into a filet mignon?
Yeah, I could think of a few. It happens in both in weddings and in corporate. I think I can think of some. Man. So yeah, sometimes in weddings, and sometimes you have couples that just aren't, I would say they're just not very not very emotional. They're not very I can't think of the word.
Charismatic.
Yeah. They don't hug. You might ask them a lot of times. I'll be with the photographer and we'll be asking them to, okay, if you guys could kind of, kiss in this position, that position. And sometimes they're just kind of like a really quick smidge. And then they're kind of like, okay, like we kissed, like, so now what? It's kind of like, no, let's try to kind of go down that road a little bit. So working on those, that's when the editing can really be challenging. So yeah, to overcome those, you need good music, and that's when I'll be a little more adamant that I choose the music, because I don't typically choose it. I let them choose what they want because it's for them. But in that scenario, I might be a little more adamant that I need to pick the music, because I can pick something that's really good and can kind of get us through.
So what about on the company? What about the corporate stuff? Because you and I worked on that together. You got some people you can ask one question and it's like they're going down the roller coaster and they're off to the races. That's easier than you ask a question and you get a one-word response and and it's like, okay, I'm creating this company video. Talk about that.
Yeah, I know. We have that in common for sure. Yeah, I think honestly, to give you an honest answer, we get some other interviews. Yeah, you do the best you can,
Yeah.
and you can kind of dig on them a little bit, and try to become comfortable with them. Um, try to get some rapport and try to find somewhere in them that can get something out. But sometimes it's just not there in those corporate videos, and that's when you set up a couple more interviews. Really is the true answer.
Okay. All right. So I got a question for you because you've been in Hollywood, you've been an actor, you've done video production. So what is your favorite show now to kind of binge watch that you think is really cool video? And what are you going to tell us? You say, wow, stay away from that one. Boy, they did not do a good video job. So what's your favorite and what's your advice to stay away from?
Well, I don't watch many shows. I'm a movie guy.
Okay.
I don't watch shows because I get hooked into them, and then I feel like they get, they start dragging them on until I get sick of it. So I'm more of a movie guy. But for movies, I've got I don't know. We just watched The Whale last night with Brendan Fraser. We weren't huge fans. I thought they did a great job filming it. They filmed pretty much the whole thing in an apartment, and they did an awesome job of that. The actors did a great job. I just wish the story had a little more to it. So that's you take it if you got nothing better to do, film.
Is there one you recommend? You say, hey, gee, that was great.
Gosh. So I have two very, very different ones. They're two of my favorites. One is Blue Valentine, which is really a sad movie, but I like it because it's a true story. Well, I don't know if it's a true story, but I should say it's a real story that happens in human life all the time. And I really appreciate movies like that just are just a real, like, you can relate to, somebody going through that, whether it was yourself or somebody close to you. And then my other one is completely different. It's Crazy Rich Asians because I like romantic comedies. I'm a sucker for them. And
all right.
I watch that one probably once a year.
That's a fun one. That's a fun one.
I'm going to move away from Plead the Fifth because something popped in my head when you were talking about that, and I don't know why, but let's say we've got somebody listening or watching, and they own a company, and they say, "Gosh, I gotta get a video up about me. I need a video commercial, so to speak." What is the right length of time? Now, you said having a short version and a long version, and when we did the project, that really worked well. Can you talk about what's the ideal time for the short version? What's the ideal time for the longer version on a website?
I think your shorter version should be somewhere between maybe 1 and 2 minutes, I would say, ideally. Probably more often than not, that ends up being 3 minutes. In most video projects, it just goes that way. It's just hard to cut everything out. So I would say ideally 1 to 2, no more than 3 for the short one. And then for the long one, probably anywhere from 3 to 7 minutes. It just depends. And I think that you just have to be really, really picky like we were, where you just really start cutting things down, and it's really like you just get really picky on, is this really, you get your best nuggets down, then you start to compare nuggets, and it's like, yeah, that nugget could go, and you just work it down. So yeah, I would say 7 minutes is really, really long. That would be an unusual circumstance where it's just there's so much, but I think maybe 3 to 5 minutes would be a good long version.
Linda, before you asked your question, you made me think. I mean, it was funny when we were going through it. I know that at least I said, "Oh boy, that's great. That's a keeper." And then all of a sudden, you have to start after you've watched the entire thing, and you have to get down under some. It's like, boy, I really, really like this, but I don't think it's making the cut. And it's really there's a whole art and science to it that I learned so much. It's like, okay, we got a time capacity, and as much as I thought this was great, and it ain't making it. So anyway, keeping our time, Linda, go ahead and ask your next question.
Okay, well, just kind of tying into that, what do you find most challenging about what you do, Nolan? I mean, obviously you've got some clients that won't talk, won't kiss if they're getting you've got some people who maybe aren't prepared, but what do you say? You say kind of, God, that's hard to deal with in today's world.
Man, yeah, I guess it's not that exciting of an answer, but really it's nothing too much. I mean, there's things that I will say like the scenarios where somebody doesn't talk that well or doesn't kiss, as you mentioned, but it's just, it kind of is what it is. And I've just kind of got this go with the flow and make it work thing. And so, yeah, unfortunately, I wish I had a really good, like, oh man, when that thing happens, but well, I don't really feel like anything is too difficult. It's just kind of like, well, okay, that it didn't work that way. Let's try to go around this way.
All
That's,
right.
I guess, my mentality.
All
Sorry.
right. So you have a way to get around things, which is good to know. And we want to thank you so much for being a guest here on the Shrimp Tank. So if listeners want to get in touch with you, find out more about your company, how they can get into the video production, get something done for themselves, where can they get more information?
My website would be the best place, soulfirefilms.com.
Okay.
And then it has of course, my email and phone number, and then all kinds of different information and video projects and things on there.
All right. So make sure once you do that, make sure you also check out all of our replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle and wherever you get your podcast, iHeart, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, because damn, we are
ubiquitous.
We are ubiquitous. And follow us on our show's social media pages on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
First of all, Nolan, thanks for being on the show. People don't know that you were called into duty to kind of come out of the bullpen. We had an opening and you answered and delivered. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to maybe future projects, but at least seeing you out on the golf course here soon. Linda, as always, thank you. Everybody, do exactly what Linda says. Like us on our Facebook page, because that's where we live stream every Wednesday at noon. And in fact, Nolan will be happy to know that he knows the next person, Aaron Lavelle from Olympic Education Association. Aaron saw that you were going to be on today, and he sent me a quick note that I think you were a student of his. Aaron is the CEO, basically, of the Olympic Education Association, which is more than just education. He's running a business. So he will join Monica Blackwood and myself next week. Join us, please. In the meantime, be safe, be well, and be prosperous, because until next week, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond.